It's for me an honor to have a guest like Fabiola Campbell today. I admire her work and I feel like we share a passion for what we do with the community of migrant professionals all across Australia. Fabiola Campbell is the founder of Professional Migrant Women, and also she wrote a book called Own It. I'm always curious about the person behind the achievements. And I read a bit about your story in the book, but I would like if you could please highlight that stepping stone or that turning point in your career that made you who you are today and gave you the purpose that leads what you do.
Oh, well, first of all, can I say it is a privilege for me to be here with you to share this space. As you mentioned at the beginning, we both share a passion, and I'm also admiring the work that you do, the way you do your work as well. I think is very inspirational for me too. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and also now that we're starting to share different spaces, I can see a different side of you, and yeah, I think is very admirable. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Solange.
Thank you.
So back to your question. Sorry. Pivotal moments. I think obviously life I think is made out of many different moments, right? But probably some of them have more significance than others. I have been in Australia now for 21 years, but around the 15-year mark, I I felt that I didn't have any clear purpose in my life. Mind you, I am the kind of person who likes exploring new things and maybe getting new challenges in life. I like when I am hands on into a project, and from what I could see about my personal life, I felt that I was I wasn't professionally where I wanted to be. But I also noticed that there were that I was meeting many other women out there, through friends or why not, who who didn't even know how to get into the job market in Australia. And at that point, I was working, and I still do, as a corporate trainer. And I had been very fortunate in the time that I had been here in Australia, especially at the beginning, that I had people around me who really helped me understand the recruitment process. And that is a journey for anybody, a journey to be have. And and yeah, I finally was successful at securing a professional job and to start growing in my career. But then I had a child. I think your priorities change a lot when you have a, a child. And also, there are many other pressures that you experience as a migrant. And my relationship wasn't going well. Um, and yeah, I was lost for purpose, to be honest. I wanted more of life. I wanted to give out more, and I didn't know how to do that. And if we actually talk about a pivotal moment, um, I can share with you something that for me was quite significant. So I work in local government, and that year, about 7 years ago, uh, I was able to participate in a conference for local government professionals. So it was a leadership conference for women in local government. And I thought, well, why not? Let's see what's out there. I want to, learn new things, maybe get new connections, new insights. And I went to this conference. And it was a day-long conference. They had a lineup of really great speakers, and all of them were Anglo-Saxon women. But the last speaker of the day was an African woman who came to Australia as a refugee. At that point, she had been in Australia for more than 20 years, and who gave the keynote speech. So, the most important speech of the whole conference. This woman, as I said, she was African, she was Muslim. Um, she didn't work for local government, and she didn't have a degree as such. Yet, she was the most important voice of that day. And after her speech, I felt compelled to connect with her, to go and have a chat with her. And I did that, and I got her details. I got connected to her, and I started following her in the service that she was providing for the community. By the way, it is a garden, so she opened up the garden in her house to the community, to welcome the community, and she ran different events in there. So I started, you know, networking with her, catching up, getting her advice. But going back to that point, it didn't become clear to me until some time, maybe, I don't know, 10 months afterwards. I wasn't sure what happened to me that day. But then, going through this process, something became clear. That was the first time probably that I saw a woman that I could become. I saw a woman who wasn't the mainstream Anglo-Saxon woman, who was a woman, from a different country. And even though probably Mariam and I, her name is Mariam Isa, and probably Mariam and I don't have many things in common. She's way taller than me, and she wears a scarf, and she's darker, she's African. She speaks English really well, but we both speak English as a second language. So even though there were many differences, I could see myself in that person, a role model. Later on, I learned that that's called representation. When you can see yourself in the leaders around you. And that for me was a pivotal moment. Because I understood in my relationship with Mariam that every single one of us has a story to tell. And that our story matters. And that we don't have to hide and pretend to be someone else that we are not. So that was the point when that started something inside me, and that led to the work that I do these days with professional migrant women.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. It's profound. For me, it's also a way of seeing belonging, right? When you find that representation in a person from a different culture and you realize that we belong to each other, right? And that's why we belong to where we are. It doesn't matter where we are if we're connected with the people that help us feel as we belong. So I connect very much with your story. I think that by becoming leaders and representing our culture in Australia, we also open the doors for other people to feel like you felt on that day. So through the work that we do with the community and opening doors for other people to share their stories. And that's basically the purpose of this podcast and why I started this platform as a storytelling platform, because I feel every voice deserves to be heard and every story has a meaningful impact to make. So I agree with you that giving voice to those stories has such a profound impact. And you mentioned briefly about the challenges of getting into the workforce when you migrate to a new country, right? And I wanted to ask you around that because once you enter, because you have your first employment opportunity, I feel that there are more challenges around like permanence and growing. And what was
Yeah,
your experience and the experience of the people you've met around those topics?
I think that's really a really good question. And this is a phenomenon that I observed, you know, um, during our mentoring program. So when people came to us wanting to get their first job, many, oftentimes they were stressed, they were anxious, they really wanted to get that first professional job. And once they achieved that, oh, you know that was amazing. They were completely over the moon, they were excited, they were just very energized going for it. And many times, some of them got in touch with us and they said, I don't know what I'm doing, I think I'm doing everything wrong. And it was like a process of again, uncertainty, doubt, confusion, um, and depression, or borderline depression. Why? Because there were so many new things, and they started to question their own value, their own knowledge, their own contribution. And so that is one thing. But the interesting thing to know or to understand is that in Australia, you have a 3 to 6 month probation period. So you can actually learn how to do your job. I mean, you're hired for your skills, but you are expected to learn how to do your job in in that probation period. Um, so that is one thing that probably they didn't understand. And the other thing, and I think that's very cultural from many cultures around the country, maybe non-English speaking, is that there is a fear in the back of our heads that tells us that if we don't know how to do the job, if people find out that we don't know how to do the job, we're going to get sacked. And that is not the expectation here in Australia, in most workplaces anyway. Um, as I said before, they hire you for your skills and they expect you to learn how to do the job. So what was happening here was that they were so afraid of being found that they didn't know how to do the job that they never reach out for help. They never, felt confident to ask questions, to clarify the tasks and so on. And of course, they were setting themselves out for failure, right? And that it became a loop. Yeah, they try to do something, they don't know how to do it, they don't ask for help, then they fail at that task, and then they feel terrible about themselves. But having these kind of conversations in which you encourage people to have regular catch up with your supervisors, to write down any questions that you have, to ask your work colleagues to teach you how to do certain processes. Look, as a corporate trainer, I know that for any new employee in any work place, there's a lot of training, mandatory training that people have to do, and that is on top of the work that they're supposed to do, right? so training is a basic component of that uh, onboarding and probation period. And and I think that, when we started communicating that idea, then people were starting to have better results and to be more relaxed moving into a new job or a new workplace. But it's a very, very common experience for many migrant women.
And I can add that the women I guide and I mentor usually are not sure on how to communicate. So they may want to ask for help, but there is a gap between the communication styles from their culture and the Australian culture. So I wanted
Right.
to ask, in your experience, how did you face this and how did you feel this gap when you first came? It was many years ago, but I'm not sure. And maybe with your DARE method, you cover some of that around how to be more visible without hiding who we are and creating those meaningful connections from a place of authenticity.
Look, I think there are quite a few things in there that came to mind. And I am naturally an extroverted person. And what does that mean? An extroverted person is the kind of person that gets energy by being around people, and we tend to be more outgoing and conversationalist and um, social, if you like. So for me, asking that kind of questions was never a problem. It was a natural thing. But I am very aware that that's not the case for every person. And introverts, they have it harder than extroverted people. Um, so that is one thing. Um, I believe personally, and this is the way I operate in life. Um, I believe that most people want to do the right thing, and most people are happy to help other people, right? Um, and if I ask you, would that be true about yourself?
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
And when
Yeah.
you, yes, and when you ask most people, they will respond in the same way,
Mm.
right? We, well, unless you are a sociopath or something, but most people consider themselves good people, and we want to do the right thing. So it's very rare that you reach out for help and somebody doesn't want to help you.
Mm.
That is number one. And number two, the other interesting thing that I have learned is that asking for help actually helps build relationship and build trust. And that is such an important thing that we need when we are new in a in a workplace or in a new country, in a new community. Reach out, ask for help. That is probably one of the fastest ways of building relationships. um if you are an introvert person, um ask your team leader, how do you do things in here? How can you, what is the right way of asking for help? you know by asking those questions and people giving you the answers, they are actually giving you permission to do so, right? So you know how things are done in that workplace, and then you can proceed with that confidence of knowing that you are doing the right thing. Because I think that what is below, the fear um, of not asking for help, is to maybe annoy somebody, to get rejected, right? But if we ask permission beforehand, then we know what are the steps that have to be taken, and we can take those steps with confidence.
Hmm. Now, I have this idea that the corporate world is very competitive and that people there need to be really tough somehow, like the masculine energy coming forward. And I've met many women that say that they struggle with showing authority in their second language in that environment. How can we
Mm.
reframe that vision of that environment and what the possibilities are for being fully yourself? Some people tell me, I can't really show myself. I can't be vulnerable. I can't empathize with stories because we don't share what our personal lives look like. So, how can we have a different approach to building relationships in that space?
Again, quite a few things to unpack on that. But I think one of the things about um, showing up authentically, um, and exercise power, say in a second language, could be reframed as um, presence over power. Yeah. So, and this is something that I have to learn myself, right? Um, Sometimes, and I have learned that here at home with my teenage son, and also in the workplace, is something that applies to every relationship in life. When we want to exercise power over, um, we usually find resistance, and then is a war of wills. Who has a stronger will? um and probably if you I mean, and if that relies on language, right, of you bringing the best argument, or uh, being faster on your feet to think and give an answer, uh you might be in the short end of the stick. But if you reframe that, and it's not about power over, but power with, or even power within, how would that look like? You know, and start questioning, and probably that is case by case. Yeah, what am I trying to achieve here? How can I address these from a different perspective? And try to access that, the different kind of powers that you have within yourself. Um, and yeah, that thing about presence over power was something that really helped me ground myself in, and still does help me when I find myself in that kind of situations. So I ask myself, what do I really want to get out of this situation? Clearly, this is not working. Um, then, what is the best way that I can go about this? And pivot, and do something that really connects with yourself, that really comes from an authentic place. And that doesn't matter, that take cares of your accent, or your language as a second, your English as a second language, or anything for that effect.
Yeah, I often say that we have those inner voices, and that by listening to a different voice and acting differently, we open up to new possibilities. So I think it's a
I
matter
love
of
that.
grounding ourselves and finding that voice that tells you that there's a different way to do it. Um, and
Love it.
sometimes, as migrants, we
Mm.
even find those new voices as new purpose or our evolving careers. And we often change what we're doing at some point. Some because their degrees can't be validated in Australia. Some
Mm.
because they have been working in the same profession for several years and they are ready for a change. And sometimes because life happens, right? And you need to find something new. So for those who are going through that transition, and I know from experience, it can be stressful, it can be hard to see what's ahead, and we lack the clarity. And even though we know there are other people who could make it, and we trust the universe, and we know that there's something there waiting for us, what would you say to a person who's transitioning and finding new ways of expressing themselves throughout their jobs and their careers? And how can they find their purpose within, as you said before just jumping from one thing to the next, and keeping in that wheel of doing and doing without knowing why are we doing it?
Ooh, the year I met Mariam, when I mentioned that I was looking for purpose, or that I'm not so sure if I was looking for purpose, but I knew for a fact that I didn't feel like I had any purpose. Um, and when I meet people that are in that place, what I think is important is to be open and to be curious and explore different things that get your get you moving inside. Um, so, for example, when I met Mariam, the community that she hosts in her garden is a community for women, and being in the presence of other women and being in the presence of community really moved something inside me that I could resonate with. Um, and that is a different vibration to other things that I have tried. When my son was very little, I every birthday I used to make amazing cakes, um, and he was really happy with his cakes, and all the guests were impressed with that. But that, even though that gave me a lot of pleasure, and I actually became very good at it, that didn't give me the fulfillment that I was after, right? Or I give you another example. You might be very good at cleaning, but you might not want to be a cleaner, right? So there are some things that you are good at, but they don't necessarily give you, they might give you satisfaction, but they might not give you purpose. And different things give you different levels of satisfaction at different times. So exploring that and leaning into it, I think is the first step into finding this kind of um and I don't really want to call it purpose. For me was that at the time, but to find a way, right? I think along the way, maybe purpose will find you, but probably your purpose is to raise your family the best way possible, and having um an easy job, will help you or contribute with that purpose, right? um we don't read not everybody has to go and get into that treadmill of the corporate job because it pays well, if it's gonna make us unhappy, right? So that is the first thing. Start and try different things to see what vibrates with you. The other thing, for people who are trying to bridge that gap, micro learnings is very important. So for people who are probably exploring the possibilities of changing their jobs or getting their first job, or changing industry, or maybe even getting a promotion, um, that implies a gap, and that gap needs to be filled. And probably one of the most effective way of filling that gap is through knowledge and experience. And these days, there's so much micro learning available. You don't have to do a whole university degree to start filling those small gaps, but you can dedicate, a week or a month to learn a skill, so you can develop the confidence to go and present for that kind of jobs. And there it is, a word that comes up all the time: confidence. um, Confidence is probably one of the most common complaints or frustrations of the people in our community, or the women that we help. And when we come from a place where we are completely independent, where we make our own decisions, where we know where we're going, where we think that we have everything figured out, and then we said, this is too easy, I'm gonna change countries and see what's gonna happen because I can do everything. That's when everything crashes, and we are not prepared for it. We're not ready. And people say, and I have, I think, a whole chapter in my book about that. How you lose a part of you. I call it the death of the superwoman, because before coming to Australia, I felt so powerful and so confident, and I could do everything. And then when I moved here, it was like, okay, they took the language away, and that was like my kryptonite. I lost all my superpowers. But there's so much change that comes with migration. And if we apply that concept of micro learning into migration, there are so many things we have to learn. Not just the language, but how to order cheese in the deli. I remember I didn't know how to do that. How to catch the public transport, how to, make small decisions that were in autopilot back at home. And, we have a massive change, and we expect, and I put myself in that bucket, we expect to be at the same level of proficiency than we were when we migrated. And that is certainly not the case, and it's not realistic, no matter how good you are. Even for people who can speak English as a first language, say, for example, it's a massive change. And, one of the best advice that I have heard about building confidence is to get confident at one thing. And because when you get confident at one thing, you develop the skill of becoming confident. And then you apply that to a second thing, and then you become confident at two things. And if then you apply that to many other things, suddenly you realize, oh, I got this.
Once you realize that it's not just confidence, it's action that
Yes,
makes you grow. If you just wait
yes,
to feel confident, maybe you will never feel confident. But if you action and learn from your experience, that's when you become confident because you have the evidence. So, based on that
100%.
evidence, you can change whatever needs to be changed. And there's one
Yep,
thing before our interview comes to an end that you said, and I think it's crucial, and it's been crucial for me, that we don't need to do it alone. and
Yeah.
find that community that resonates with us and finding that tribe so we can feel supported along the way, I think for both of us has been key to such a point that we have built communities. So that space existed for other women. So I would like to first thank you for what you're doing and for all your work. And I know all the effort that it takes to build and hold
Yes.
a space for other people, but also to encourage other people to be present in those communities. And I know nowadays online presence is important, but also reach out to the local community and connect with people in person and join the events and join the opportunities that allows us to get to know each other. And I feel blessed because thanks to the internet, we can be having this conversation. But also,
Yes.
I feel encouraged to organize more events across cities. And I know that you have the same calling because I want to be able to hug these people, and get to meet them in person and feel that energy and be inspired by them and be motivated. So I encourage people who are listening to this interview, this conversation, to reach out to us, to get to know us more and to get to know people more. Sometimes it may be scary to go to places where you don't know anyone, but rest assured that once you go there for the first time, you're opening the doors to a new family that will embrace you. So,
Yes. And can I just say something else? First, find a village. I think that's very important. A community, like you said. And once you find that village, become a good villager. You know, we all expect to, just walk into communities and receive, but communities thrive when people participate and contribute, and that means that we have to be good villagers too. So an island is, last week from one of our master classes guests who shared that, and to me that was a very, very precious thought that is important to share.
that's a beautiful thought. Well, thank you so much, Fabiola. It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Sol.
I hope to see you again really soon. And
Yes.
for all the people who are not members yet, become a member of Professional Migrant Women and read Fabiola's book, Own It. I think it's
Oh, yeah.
worth having and reading more than once. So
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it, Sol.
thank you. It's been lovely.